What's up, guys? It's Colin for theScore eSports. I've got Josh Burry with me as well. And today we've got a very special guest on the show. We've got Noah Whinston, CEO of Immortals, with a big announcement. Noah, thank you for making time for us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, as always. We did have you way back in the early days of the podcast we do here at theScore eSports, but we usually don't have as much of a bombshell to drop when we do the show. I almost don't want to say it. I would like Noah, if you wouldn't mind, to give us the news in your own words.
Sure. So, as part of the Immortals organization, we've brought back the I wouldn't say ancient, but the historic MIBR Counter-Strike brand in Brazil. MIBR, of course, standing for Made in Brazil. And we're going to be revitalizing this brand, bringing it back with a roster of championship caliber players, some pretty cool brand partners, and really working not just to kind of bring back a historic team, but working to create a kind of legacy of infrastructure and talent development and community service here in Brazil that I think can do a lot to transform the scenario here and be a model for how organizations work in other parts of the world as well.
So just to hit the nail right on the head, you have signed the now former SK Gaming roster of boltz for Fallen, coldzera, and Stewie 2K.
That's correct.
Okay, well, congratulations on that acquisition. Can you tell us when Immortals as an organization started pursuing or thinking about this specific set of players?
Sure. I mean, we've been friends with the core of this roster for a very long time. The first Counter-Strike roster we ever picked up, the original Immortals Counter-Strike roster, was the second best Brazilian team at the time. That was basically living across the street from Fallen and the SK guys when we picked them up. And so, having the second best Brazilian team means that we interact a lot with the first best Brazilian team. And so over the years, we really came to know the people behind that team. Fallen, Cold, boltz played for us on Immortals. Fur has been a part of that team for a while. And of course, the support staff like Dead have been with that team since the very beginning. So I think for us, it was less of a formal initiation of a process and more just kind of a capturing of the right moment in time to find an opportunity to collaborate.
Can you tell us who reached out first or who first proposed a move? Was it your side or the players?
Honestly, it's a little hard to remember. Again, like the conversations between us and the players of this team, they span from business to personal issues, and they happen in a lot of different settings and contexts. So, I don't think there was ever a moment where one person sent over a formal business proposal, but I think there's some, kind of gravitational force that brought both sides together over the course of a long time of knowing each other.
Can you give us any details on the acquisition of this roster? Any monetary figures, dates, deals, contract expiry, anything like that?
I can give you a little bit. So these guys are going to start playing for us in early July. Their first tournament under the MIBR banner is going to be ESL 1 Cologne, which is a pretty awesome tournament to launch a new brand at. And these guys have also signed what we believe to be the longest contracts in Counter-Strike. They're committed to this brand and to this organization as part of their history, frankly, more than it's a part of mine. And it was something that they were very excited about doing to revitalize the brand and to play under MIBR. So I think with these players, what we've created is a really special scenario where it's not just about them putting on a jersey because they're contractually required to, but it's about them representing their home country, representing the place where they're from, and trying to give back to it in as many ways as possible through playing, through community service, through content creation, through all the other things that they want to pursue in their individual lives.
You said this could be the longest set of contracts in Counter-Strike history. How long is longest?
We're not going to talk about specific dates in public at this moment, but at least based on what we know of where other contracts are sitting, we believe these to be the longest.
So, fast forwarding a little bit, I was going to ask you if there were any worries on the Immortals side when it comes to this particular core jumping ship. Obviously, they're leaving SK Gaming for you guys, and prior to that, there was a somewhat similar situation with Luminosity. But if you're saying that you may have signed the longest contracts in Counter-Strike, that seems like an unlikely scenario.
Yeah, and look, I think we're all on the same page with the players about where they're at in their careers and their future trajectory. Having talked to guys like Fallen and Fur, who have been playing Counter-Strike for a long time, it is, as of this moment, it's their intention to retire with this organization, to kind of play out these contracts and to make this the final home that they have as professional players. Of course, they're all in, no matter what age they are, they're all in for long and promising careers after they're done playing professionally as well. But I think, and I believe the intention here is that this is kind of in some ways, like this is their own home, right? They have a kind of co-benefit with the organization and seeing it grow. They're mutually invested with the organization and improving the Brazilian ecosystem and scenario. And I think we're all working towards the same goals.
Could you clarify which players you were referring to when you said their wish is to retire on this team?
I think that's the case for a lot of the players on this team. Again, like very long contracts plus a team that is, these guys are a decent amount older than 18 years old. So I think for a lot of the players on this team, it's their intention to retire with this team.
So I have to imagine that SK Gaming was reticent to give up this core, this entire roster, in fact, being so historically successful. Were the players unhappy with that organization or how things were going?
It's not really something for me to comment on. The players are free to speak about their time with that organization, but it's not my story to tell. I guess what I would just clarify is we don't have any particular relationship or deal structure here with SK Gaming. This isn't an acquisition of existing contracts. This is the players choosing to sign new contracts with a new organization.
Understood. Let me ask you bluntly, what are the real world expectations of this roster competitively?
Sure. Look, we all know that this is a roster that is full of championship caliber players. We all know that the core of this roster has won championships, and we know that the players on this team certainly have the talent, the dedication, and the hunger to win championships again. Certainly, they're going through a transition period right now with bringing in a player that doesn't speak Portuguese and bringing in a kind of new language of communication into the team. And that's leading to an important adjustment period that we think will lead to the team being better in the long run. So for us, we're much more of a process-oriented team than a results-oriented team. We think that there's a road here, and it's not necessarily a short one, to become a stronger team in the long haul. And we're more than willing to give these guys the time and the space and the resources they need to accomplish that transformation.
Noah, I want to ask, why did you decide to use the Made in Brazil brand, and was that your idea, or did that come from the players' side? How did that start?
So I think the desire to bring back the MIBR brand is something that was first raised by the players who talked about it with me. But I didn't require a lot of convincing to want to move forward with it. It's the legacy of the brand is unmatched in Brazil. I think it's safe to say that without the original MIBR, the Brazilian eSports scenario overall, not just the Counter-Strike scenario, might not be in the place that it is today. And I think in the same way that MIBR had such an impact on the trajectory of Brazilian esports back in the early and mid 2000s, that's the kind of impact we want to have as an organization going forward into the next generation of Brazilian esports.
Will the Immortals branding be represented graphically, iconographically? Wow, I just made up a word. Will the iconography of Immortals be represented in any physical way, say on the jerseys or the gun stickers or anything like that?
No.
Do you feel that hurts the Immortals brand? You've got a successful Overwatch team that also, for other reasons, is lacking the Immortals branding, and now you're about to sign a big-name Counter-Strike team that won't bear it either.
No, that's just not how we think about branding, right? We're not an esports organization that is looking to water ourselves down so that we can be everywhere. We believe that the best brands anywhere, whether it's in competitive esports or elsewhere, are brands that are very specific to an audience, that are very catered and targeted and narrow, not brands that attempt to be everything and everywhere at once so that everybody likes them but nobody actually loves them. So I think for a long time we've been unhappy with the branding system in esports. We don't like the idea of having every team under one brand. And independent of whether or not the players wanted to use MIBR, I think the idea of having teams under another brand isn't just isn't like a sacrifice that we're willing to accept. It's something that we're actively opting into and that we want to be doing.
Okay, Noah, it's interesting that you use the words watered down, because when we were meeting about this, we were talking about it. I used those exact words as a way to potentially explain why you guys went with this. And I wanted to ask if Immortals is not going to live in Counter-Strike for the moment, if it's going to be made in Brazil, where will it live, and what does that brand stand for now, in your opinion?
Absolutely. So Immortals is a lot of things right now, right? First of all, Immortals is a corporation that operates a lot of sub-brands, right? At the end of the day, there is a broader Immortals organization. There's an Immortals campus, and the LA Valiant and the MIBR team will use those resources when they practice and when they compete. I think the way that we're using the Immortals brand right now is, if anything, a little bit more of an incubator, right? I think if you look at some of the smaller games that we're a part of, like Clash Royale or Arena of Valor, or let's say take our Dota team for an example, these teams really aren't at the scale where they can support a new brand all by themselves, right? If we tried to create a new brand for just our Arena of Valor team, I have some doubts about how well that would go. But if you look at the Overwatch League, or if you look at this particular Counter-Strike roster, I have no doubts about them being able to support an entire organizational brand by themselves because of the scale and because of the track record and because of the fan base that they have. And so I think that's the fundamental difference.
So, Noah, this specific roster has struggled results-wise as of late. Are Immortals looking to do anything different to get them back on track to the caliber that they're historically known for?
Sure. I mean, look, I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, they certainly have not been winning championships, but I think people also often underrate the difficulty, but also the importance of the transition that they're going through right now from communicating in Portuguese to communicating in English. That's not an easy transition. It's a transition that's absolutely worth it in the long term for the team, and it's a transition that has really enabled bringing on an amazing new talent in Stewie, who we couldn't be happier to have on board. I think that transition is underway and is already starting to lead to better results than we saw at first.
So from my perspective, it's really important to contextualize these recent results. I think, of course, they're not playing like the team that is dominating the rest of the world right now. But I don't think they're that far off, right? Like, important to remember, they're still top 6, I think, in the HLTV rankings as of today. And they're certainly on the right path. Like, as an organization, we've always been more process-oriented than results-oriented. And I think from a process perspective, they have certainly been making important strides. I think we're going to be able to surround them with a higher level of support staff and infrastructure than they've had access to in the past. And I think all of those things combined are going to overall help produce results in the long term. I never promise short-term results. The competitive esports are just a little too random to do that. But from my perspective, they're putting in the work necessary. They're doing what needs to be done, and that shouldn't surprise anybody that knows these guys. These are consummate professionals in a way that's very uncommon to see in any esport, let alone in Counter-Strike.
Indeed. Speaking of consummate professionals, I think a lot of people would view this acquisition as a bit of a coup on Immortals' part, especially given the end of 2017, where unfortunately your Counter-Strike roster sort of collapsed in on itself, and there was no NALCS franchise spot. And in less than a year, you have begun what strikes me as quite a comeback story. Was there any pressure from investors or board members or people above to produce that kind of activity?
I think, there's always the standard pressure from both investors and myself to build a successful organization, not just from a competitive perspective, but from a business one. If that pressure didn't exist, I wouldn't be very good at my job. I think there wasn't specific pressure around this one move, but I certainly think that we recognize that this was a unique opportunity to not just have a competitive team, not just to have a popular team, but to really build infrastructure and to build a kind of scalable
platform on top of a group of very popular players. So from my side, it was never about needing to make a move, but really having the opportunity to make a move. And I think we still would have made this decision and be launching in this way no matter what happened at the end of 2017.
From a purely personal point of view, does it not feel good or vindicating that in less than a year you went from those two scenarios to this acquisition, this exciting news?
I mean, look, I've had to learn a while ago how to manage the emotional highs and lows that come with running a competitive team. If I got too emotionally invested in results, I would not be effective at what I do. So I'm sure this is certainly a high point. I'm sure there will be low points in the future, but at the end of the day, I still have to wake up tomorrow and get back to work to actually build something out of this. So hopefully that's actually an answer to your question.
Amen to that. I hear you.
No, I want to ask, obviously the Immortals organization has had a fair amount of history in Brazil. I just want to ask, what was it that started this journey? Like, what made you or your organization fall in love with Brazil and its fans?
I mean, look, it's impossible to deny the passion and the size of the crowds here in Brazil, whether those are online or in person. And I think from our perspective, we view the Brazilian esports ecosystem as closer to mainstream in this country than perhaps any esports ecosystem anywhere else in the Western world. With the institutions and the celebrities that are a part of this scenario here in Brazil, I think we're a lot closer to creating something truly generational here than we are in a lot of other places. And we want to be a part of that. We want to help create a new future for what esports should look like. We want to help build a new model for how teams and organizations and players and fan bases and governments should interact with esports. And we then want to take the learnings from this model and evangelize it to the rest of the world. But in order to do that, we have to prove that it works here first.
Noah, I know you've got a brand new team to go ahead and manage over there in São Paulo, so we're gonna let you get back to that. But I want to thank you so much for making time for us and talking about this exciting news with us. I know everyone in the office is looking forward to seeing what the boys can do under the MIBR banner.
Absolutely. Appreciate the support.
Thank you so much and take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching. If you want more great content just like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button.